You know, I was reflecting on Dean Squires and Dr. McKenna's comments, and I suddenly realized I should probably take out my Blockbuster card out of my wallet. But I was thinking about that, and I have a friend who has an infant. If you want to think about the change that's happening, listen to this. The infant's first word is Alexa. Interesting, isn't it? What a different generation it's going to be. And so millennials, you have people right behind you. So all the students, just as you study engineering, think about that group that's following. You know, we need people who are leaders. The most prolific change agents in the modern world will be people who think deeply and frequently about design and value and that relationship. Let that soak in for a minute. It's a long sentence, but the core of that is design and value. That means we've got a job as educators that's a little bit different than our predecessors had. In fact, we've got a challenge because you might think, as I did, that design is the pinnacle of engineering. But it's not. It's really a higher order thought process that involves both design and value. Now, I thought to start this off, sounds super serious, but let's have some fun. Okay, so we're going to do a little social media in the room. A little thumbs up, thumbs down stuff. So here's what I want to do. I've got 6 pictures. I want you to decide, snap judgment, just whether this is a good value or a bad value, a good design or a bad design. So what I'll do is I'll ask for value. I'll put a picture up and say value. And if you would just take your thumb, I think all of you have one, take your thumb and either thumbs up or thumbs down. It's a snap judgment. You may not know a lot about the thing that's on the screen, but the intention is just to illuminate it a little bit. Okay, so here we go. Those squiggly, curly, fluorescent light bulbs. Now we want to think about this, value, and I will abstain. Okay? Think about why did you decide that? Now, let's go design. What do you decide? Let's see thumbs. Interesting. All right. Quick, I like a little popcorn discussion. Why? Anyone? Why did you choose good value? Any reason? Yeah. We all need light. It's a provider of light. So what about design? Why did somebody choose good or bad design? Tell me which one you chose. Someone, anyone. Yeah. Like the symmetry. So you like the symmetry, and so I presume you said that's a good design. Okay, you got the hang of it? Let's do a couple more. The old classic ubiquitous pencil sharpener. All right, get ready. Value. Design. Interesting. Design, I saw all these thumbs come up, and they're looking at the gear, they're looking at the way those cutters are probably formed, and just kind of the hipster vibe of this thing. Does anyone use pencils anymore? Some people might be thinking of value in terms of pencil usage. So it becomes interesting when you start juxtaposing these two things. Let's do another one. I got to explain this one. I've got to tell you that the price that's listed down here is actually in today's dollars. At the time in 1950, it was a $500 item. It's a paratrooper attack scooter designed by the French. So you could parachute with this. You had a mounted recoilless rifle on this thing. And I thought, this is just really weird. So let's, based on what you know, let's prompt your thinking. What does value mean? Get your thumbs up. Let's do it. Okay. Value, make a decision. Design. Interesting. Okay, that's a goofy one. Let's do one that's a little more serious. All right. Heart and lung bypass machine. All right, ready? There's the price, $17,000. Value, To some people, right? Design. Hard to tell, right? Okay. And I think I may have just two more. It's cute. So, ready? Value. Design. You have not sat in one if you think that. Anyway. That's not mine. And the very last one is actually the pointed remark, as you might guess. Okay, the very last one, an engineering education. I didn't put a price tag on there. It varies. Value. Let's see the value. You better have your thumbs up. Design. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I got a lot of wavy thumbs. I never anticipated that. Well, let me tell you a story. And so the story goes like this. I'll start off, kind of paint a picture. It was the snowy part of Michigan's winter, which is all of it. So, a young man was sitting outside my office, very outdoorsy individual, bearded, covered in flannel shirts, and over the top of that a canvas jacket, and on the top of his head a stocking cap larger than any stocking cap I've ever seen in my life, even in Michigan. That does not do it justice. This was like your grandmother's shawl mounted on your head. He looked up and offered an explanation. He said, "My girlfriend made it." "I understand. You wear it." This was Ben. So Ben is a former student. I'll tell you just a little bit about Ben. I got to share a little backstory on Ben. Ben was an electrical engineering student of mine, and studying signals and systems sophomore year, became disillusioned with electrical engineering, with engineering in general, and with his engineering education. Why the picture? He packed up his bike and he headed to California, which I guess is where you find yourself. It's a state in the union where you find yourself. Not Wisconsin, that's where I'm from. So he biked for a year, camped out, took his dog in his truck, and just did his thing. Kind of reflecting. I love Ben. He's a fascinating, interesting young man. But he came back disillusioned and disenchanted. In fact, he said, I got to share one more thing about Ben. I got to know Ben as a sophomore. And as a sophomore, he would bicycle into school even in the wintertime. Sometimes I'd pass him on my way in. And I'd see him, and I had asked him, "Why are you biking in the wintertime?" "It's my dedication to not using any fossil fuel for 1 year." Oh, okay. That's a little different. And so I was starting to understand some of the drivers this generation had. And right about that time, I happened to be teaching, but in a workshop. And the workshop happened to be a KERN workshop. It's now the organization that I'm affiliated with. But at the time, I was teaching. And the workshop, we started talking about mindset as a feature, an essential feature for the rising generation of engineers. And in fact, we talked about a specific type of mindset. Let me talk about mindset. Before we go any further, let's talk about mindset. It is not a very precise word by any stretch. Psychologists don't agree what mindset is. Educators, much less, agree what mindset is. So we have, in our group, I have sort of a working definition. Let me share it just to illustrate. You have beliefs, an identity, a set of values somewhere at your core. You might believe, I'm an engineer, some identity. You might have certain values. I like hard work and a great work ethic. Somehow, those beliefs and identities and values are converted on a good day into what you do and what you think. But there's something in between. There's a contextual filter. And so this is putting a label on something that kind of is in between these two things. And the idea is putting mindset. To put some other words on it, people might say mindset is your worldview, dispositions, It's your attitudes, drivers, and motivations. It's a whole collection of things that form your mindset. So if you encounter a situation, say it's a challenge, do you have a mindset that embraces that challenge, or do you run away from it? Well, it changes depending on the situation, right? But you tend to fall into one category or another, perhaps, when it comes to a certain context. So that's the idea of mindset. Now, over on the right-hand side, on what you think and do, well, that's going to take something we know very well, and that's the skill set. We're well practiced in delivering a skill set. As engineering educators, we help students hone their skills, help them reason, capitalize on talents they have, and their abilities. Even communication falls into that skill set category. And when you operate those skills in this context, in the world, you get results, right? And those results go back and they influence your mindset. They could even influence your beliefs and identity, but they go back, there's a feedback loop there. All right, so that's the concept. To explain a little bit further, what you see on the screen is two ideas, a mindset and a skill set. To simplify this, when we talk about it, we like to use a metaphor. Say, you can't separate these two things. They have to travel together. So we use a tandem bike to represent this. This is a mindset and a skill set. In fact, here's a great example, one of my favorite examples. When I think about a surgeon, I think about their skill set, particularly if I'm going into the operating room. So you think about their skill set, but think also about their mindset. If they care for the human, if they care about the human condition in general, they'll probably keep their skills sharp, and it will reach the full potential of their skills. So this mindset, that's a mindset piece. That's not necessarily a skill set piece. The two go hand in hand. Just to illustrate a couple more examples, take a police officer. So a police officer has certain skills, right? They know how to drive, they know how to handle a weapon, they know how to use authoritative communication. Those are the skills that they learn. But what should their mindset be? It's not exactly skills. It should be around civic safety, rule of law. That's not skills, that's a mindset. All right, the punchline, an engineer. So an engineer has a certain set of skills, but that is actually where comes to some fruit through the mindset. So these two things are coupled together. So here's a phrase that we like to toss around among all the people that we work with, and it goes like this. It's kind of our mantra. The engineer we need has an entrepreneurial mindset coupled with engineering thought and action, expressed through collaboration and communication, and founded on character. That's a great recipe. And one of my favorite images, just to kind of put a final point on it, one of my favorite images is this one, because I like cars. So skill set is power, and mindset is direction. It's about as succinct as you can get. So when we go back to that model, and we talk about what is mindset, it's this middle piece. What features of a mindset would really produce, and here's a word we like to use. When you work at a foundation, I learned something going from the university to a foundation. When you work at a foundation, you get to throw words around like this, human flourishing. But you get to treat it seriously, so it's incredible fun. So what mindset would produce human flourishing, progress, well-being? So here's the three that we've arrived at. If you foster in your students a dispositional curiosity so that they come into the classroom curious, they leave the classroom curious, they live their life curious. They have a mental habit of connecting information. When they hear two things, they figure out where's the intersection, and they try to develop an insight. And this one, they have an inclination to create value. Well, that's the strongest one, I think, sometimes. In fact, we call these things, just to have a title, we call these things the 3 C's, just to be something that we can talk about. And you've heard that term even this morning. But of all the 3 C's, that last C around creating value is probably the most important, and the most important to Ben's story. So back to this story. Ben was disillusioned. I asked him something that I had not asked an engineering student ever. I said, Ben, forget about electrical engineering. He's coming back to finish his degree. He's got some projects and classes to finish. And I say, Ben, forget about electrical engineering for a moment. Forget about your degree for a moment. What sort of value do you want to create? His eyes lit up, and he started talking about hydroponics, growing vegetables and lettuces and fish in tanks and all this entire system. And you know what? I have to admit, to full transparency, my first thought was, that's not electrical engineering. But he was interested in, you could tell, he lit up at that particular topic. And so the next thing I did, after I didn't actually say that's not electrical engineering, I said, let me call someone. So I called a young, energetic chemistry professor. And she happened to be doing work in biodigesters. And biodigesters, if you're not familiar, is where you take a waste stream, it could be any type of waste, even field waste, and you put it into a digester in an anaerobic oxygenless sense, and it produces methane. So you have to put in the right mix. It's kind of like sourdough or something. You have a certain mix of chemicals, and people are good at figuring out the actual mix of chemicals that you put into this thing to be efficient. And in fact, you want to figure out how to feed the thing, you want to control the chemicals. It's a pretty complicated process. So before we go on, I want to tell you about the rest of Ben's story, but before we go on, I want to talk about mental habits, because this is really the focus of the story. And I have to admit something to you. I have the little thing I do. I have a habit. Whenever I finish at a restaurant and I'm done with the conversation and I'm done with the meal, I take out my wallet and I apparently tap it sideways. I had no idea. In poker, you would call this a tell or something like that, right? Well, my family alerted me to this fact. and while that's just a silly, frivolous habit, there are mental habits that are really important. If you start thinking about how you have habits about, say, creating value, do you think about creating value in every part of your day? What if you did? How would your day be different if this pervaded your thoughts? You enter a room and you're thinking about, how do I create value in this room? You enter a classroom, how do I create value? This is a really great habit to develop, and an important one. And it's part of mindset. That's why we're talking about habits, because habits end up being part of a mindset. There's a well-known Stanford psychologist who's done some work on mindsets. And just to give you an illustration, she asked children to come into a study, and she would hand a child a puzzle. The child would complete the puzzle. And then she would have them visit again at a later time. Child would come in, but this time, the child was offered the same puzzle that they saw before or a different new puzzle. Some chose the same, some chose different. Okay, that part of the study is not as important as the next thing. What she discovered is, she called this a mindset, a particular mindset that these individuals had. But the important part, the important discovery, was that mindset is malleable. It's plastic. You can shape it yourself, you can have external forces shape it, just like our model in the previous diagram. So that's good news. Because if you want to develop certain features in mindset, certain mental habits, you can do it. So if you're thinking about, back to the first topic, the relationship between creating value and the exercise we did, creating value and design, it's a great topic to think about a lot of different things, where you think about your own car, whether you think about the seat that you're sitting in, or whether you think about a bridge, or I'm pandering to the audience, an HP 41CV. Or you think about your job and creating value and how you approach it, and how you can foster that same mental habit in students. Or maybe if you just look to your left or right, you think about the design and value of that individual. It's a joke. Just relax. Let me show you a video that we show students, and I know faculty members across the network use this video to illustrate the point. I have not titled this. I've got a new title as of this morning. I want to call this video The Disobedient Engineer. It's catchy.
A growing number of universities, businesses, and authors are recognizing the need for the United States to produce engineers with an entrepreneurial mindset. With the help of Daniel and Alicia, two students who just graduated with engineering degrees, we'll look at what this mindset is and what it isn't. Daniel and Alicia received their degrees from a university that teaches traditional engineering, with an emphasis on problem solving and technical acumen. When they arrive at their new jobs, they receive the specifications and get straight to work. They apply the technical skills they acquired in college and even demonstrate some innovation, but that's where their engagement ends. Daniel and Alicia focused on the problem at hand and executed the task they were given, but they did not engage the company's customers or anticipate new market opportunities. Eventually, global competition eroded the company's market share until it was no longer profitable. Could an entrepreneurial mindset have led to a more positive outcome? This time, Daniel and Alicia began by asking questions. Recognizing the problem as an opportunity, they talk with customers about their needs. The answers make them reconsider the purpose of the new specifications. The feedback leads them to the realization that there are different markets. When they analyze societal and economic trends, it becomes clear that one market segment will grow. The specification handed to them is not the answer. Instead, they propose an alternate technology that better serves the growing market. In this process, Daniel and Alicia simultaneously evaluated the need, the market, societal trends, and technical feasibility. Now that they understand the full range of opportunities, Daniel and Alicia collaborate with each other and with colleagues to design a product that exceeds the specifications, achieves cost savings, and expands into new business opportunities. They exhibited the attributes of entrepreneurially minded engineers, helping their employer meet with commercial success.
It's a fun video. A lot of faculty have used this to great effect. And in fact, some faculty here at ASU I know have used this and then asked their students to comment on it and through a social media activity. And it's been phenomenal just to watch that from afar in Wisconsin and have the other network members see how it's used. You know, I think you could apply entrepreneurial mindset to anything, especially the way it's defined as the 3 C's. Curiosity, of course. You want your students to be curiosities, but what steps are we taking in the classroom? Making those mental connections, yeah, we certainly want that. And creating value, it's all virtuous, noble activity, but it ends up requiring that faculty change what they're doing in their classroom. The interesting thing is, if you're going to couple this to one occupation, what occupation, and focus your efforts on entrepreneurial mindset in one vocation, I think being an engineer was probably a great choice, because then you not only have a tremendous skill set and the mindset that produces a change agent in the world. So I used to, this is a little telling here. I used to wear this button in school. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this guy was really lonely. So people wore buttons those days, I promise. So, but anyway, there is a real reason to love an engineer. Here's a great reason. A Berkeley economist found that for every engineer that you add to a community, 5 additional jobs are created. It's because the engineer often works in tradable, exportable goods, and that supports an economy. So they need a butcher, they need a grocer, a restaurateur. So as a result of that, it has the highest multiplier of any other job category. So when you add an engineer, the next one is I believe it's in manufacturing, and it's a multiplier of around 2 or so. So coupling this entrepreneurial mindset to engineering is powerful. Well, a lot of schools agree, a lot of faculty agree. So there's a network out there, and that network of people And the network of institutions spans the U.S. right now. We've got 28 different partners. Let me just give you some numbers for a crowd that likes numbers. 28 different partners. There are 3,500 engineering faculty members who are teaching about 50,000 engineering undergraduates. If you think about the total number of engineering undergraduates, somewhere maybe just ballparking at about 600,000, this becomes a significant piece of that. We are making a dent as a network in bringing an entrepreneurial mindset into engineering. To be a partner, one thing that might occur to you is, what is a partner? A university partner commits as a college to put entrepreneurial engineering throughout their program. So it's a whole collection of faculty. It might be the rare instance of faculty all getting on board, pointing one direction, saying, let's do this, and figure out how to put entrepreneurial mindset into our courses. The thing that I think you will appreciate about it is we don't come with a plan. I don't have any booklets that I drop off or anything like that. I came from higher ed, I know higher ed, and I know no one there wants a prescription. You don't want a lesson plan. What you want are ideas. So what we do, as the network really does this, is share these core ideas. It's not prescriptive. You, the faculty, have the intellectual charge of figuring out how will they put the 3 C's into their curriculum. And it's a fun charge. So let me just show you one more video that reflects what a faculty member said about this.
My name is Will Ebel. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at St. Louis University. When I was first introduced to KERN, there's no doubt I was a skeptic. I mean, too much stuff in the classroom already, more technology coming in every day, and just very hard to kind of squeeze in anything more. I went to a workshop. I learned a lot of ideas of how to sort of bring KERN concepts into my classes. I was a little bit less clear how that would apply to electrical engineering. Electrical engineering is a bit more abstract. But in the end, I tried a few things. The students, they just got excited. You know, I mean, they did. It's like they see value in this and they take personal ownership of it. And it gave them a very practical feel for what they're learning in the classroom. And that made all the difference in the world. I did that with the Linear Systems Lab, specifically with the vowel recognition project, and I also did it with communications, with the way I introduced the different modulation schemes. The time lost in that, which is not very much, is definitely made up by the motivation of the students and the fact that the students are more actively engaged in my classes and they tend to learn faster. And that ultimately allows me to speed the course up and make up for that lost time. If you're a skeptic, all I can ask you is, imagine a classroom full of students that are actively engaged and truly hang on every word you say. That's what KERN does. As far as opening up their minds to connections that you can make, you know, from your technical ideas to the marketplace, you energize your students and they will learn a lot faster. And that's really what KERN's all about.
I appreciate that video because I can relate to it. I was a skeptic. I was teaching. I told you I was at a university. I saw this program transform faculty members and the students, and one particular student that I'm just relating to you is Ben. There's an actual picture of Ben. And so there's the guy who biked around California. Let me tell you the rest of his story. It gets pretty interesting. So when he started thinking about creating value, yes, he was interested in hydroponics, all things green, but when he started thinking about value, he started thinking about where is there an opportunity and how can I make an impact at scale? That's a different type of thinking, right? It's not just falling in love with the technology or an idea, it's figuring out how you can make a difference with it. And so here's what happened. He got in contact, that faculty member, that young chemistry professor, helped put him in contact with a Swedish company that was working on biogas digesters. They ended up implementing some of those in the community, which is relatively famous now, Flint, and implementing a biodigester system to produce methane as auxiliary power in an auxiliary power system. So they basically built it. That's the point. He built it together with this Swedish company. The Swedish company took such an interest in him, they took him to Sweden, so he learned a lot more about how this works. He comes back, and the state representatives are interested in what he's doing, and the King of Sweden comes and visits and chats with him. When you start creating value, weird, good stuff happens to you. And so it will happen to your students. So that's the Swedish connection to this particular story. Here's the takeaway. The takeaway is that everyone in here is a change agent. Your faculty members, you have leverage. You have incredible leverage. Some of us, I think, don't realize the power we have to engage with the student and affect them in a way where that will affect their entire career, that will affect the next generation, and so on. So when you think about creating value and design and start thinking about how those two go together, you're thinking on something that's higher order than just design. And as you impart that to your students, you're going to be a world changer, difference maker, all those terms. And you know what? They're going to remember you for it. So that's the idea. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm John Tester from Northern Arizona University, and I hate to be the first question's a little bit, maybe a little negative, but I used to work
I'm
in
ready.
industry. I used to work in industry for quite a while, and it's interesting to see in different industries too. First of all, what you're showing is what we used to call educating the holistic design process, okay, about 10 years ago. But the other side of that is when I was working in industry, and my bosses came to me and said, okay, here's your needs, design to this, and here's the specifications, design to that, or give us the specs. And we came back and said, no, actually your marketing's incorrect. I would be fired. Okay, I'm just trying to tell you, you've got to watch the way it's presented sometimes. I laughed when I saw that a little bit because still today there's industries out there that have, unfortunately, compartmentalized concepts of how things are done. Marketing works with the customers. The engineers designed specifications based on that market analysis. And for the engineers to try to interfere with that process is a danger to their employment. So has anyone else ever mentioned that to you before?
Absolutely, and it's very true. I came from Michigan, and there's a lot of companies in Michigan that operate in very much the way that you describe. And in fact, it starts my mind thinking about a couple different things. The person who created the foundation wanted to do. He was working as an engineer in a engine factory in Waukesha, Wisconsin. They asked him to continue to work on the larger engines. He said, I think there's an opportunity to work on this smaller device, a generator, a fractional horsepower device. And in fact, he was fired. The rest of the story is that his business grew over decades and produced a foundation that continues to do good. I think there's a lot of good things that can certainly come out of that process of yes, being that disobedient engineer. And I say that with tongue in cheek a little bit because I understand there's a balance between knowing when to be disruptive and when not to be disruptive. But wouldn't you say that at a company, if it truly was a good idea that you had, or a directional change, you'd want to work at a company that would listen to that. And so I think as we kind of push in that direction, we really are pushing industry a little bit too. Any other questions? Yes, in the front, Lily.
Thank you. Doug, thank you so much. Exceptional presentation. Lily Gossage from Cal Poly Pomona. We have about 43 to 45 students. This is kind of the largest PSW where we had so many students participating, and I want to let the students know, please ask Mr. Melton all the questions. He won't be here tomorrow, but can you speak a little bit about what KERN does to maybe bridge the gap between the generations? We've got a lot of extras here, baby boomers, and they're just learning now from some of your words of advice how to deal and manage with millennials. Is there some advice you can give us as we're learning to maybe manage ourselves, how we teach, how we communicate in the millennial age?
Yeah, one of the, I think this is a perfect timing with millennials and this idea of entrepreneurially minded learning. One aspect of, if you think about a spectrum of learning, there has been teacher-centric approaches and there are student-centric approaches. And there's kind of a spectrum in between, if you will. The entrepreneurially minded learning really puts that student in the driver's seat, and it kind of fits the millennial desire to be an owner-operator of their idea. It creates some challenges for the educators because anything that is extremely student-centric can be diversive. You can end up with 30 projects instead of your one nicely controlled project that everyone is working on. So there are challenges to it, certainly. But in terms of being able to match up a student with their passion and with their desire to work on something that's individually fulfilling to them and also if essential to the society, there's nothing better than entrepreneurial mindset. And that's why it is fitting the millennial generation right now. Thank you all once again very much.